we're going to talk today about how AI could change the way games are made. And to do that, I'd like to welcome Neil Young, who's the founder and the managing partner of Edenic, who has a lot of experience making video games.
Sup?
So, Neil.
John?
We're going to keep Tom, the producer of this, on his toes to start with. You've got a long history making video games.
So long.
And we have a bunch of images of things you've worked on.
Oh, God.
That I challenged Tom to put up on the screen while you talk about it. Can you talk about all the things you've worked on? Before we talk about AI, can you talk about all the things that you've worked on? Just to kind of...
Like everything?
Qualify you as a game maker.
Yeah, okay, so let's see. I started in the games industry in the UK. And I was originally a programmer, and then like all failed programmers became a producer. I've literally made hundreds of games. Some of the earliest things would be like, the arcade ports of Golden Axe, or Outrun, did a lot of stuff like that. And then I moved to the US, and...
There we go, we got Golden.
Oh my God, that's good. I moved to the US, and I worked with Virgin and produced the Aladdin games for Sega Genesis and The Lion King, and I worked on Dune 2, I worked on Dune 1, which exists. Look, there we go. There's Aladdin. From Virgin, I went to Origin Systems. I ran Origin Systems for a few years. We launched Ultima Online there, Wing Commander, obviously the Jane's flight simulators. I then went from there back to Redwood Shores at Electronic Arts and produced EA's one and only ARG, a game called Majestic. It would like call you on the phone, send you faxes. You would chat with it. It was an AI game long before its AI time. And then at Electronic Arts, I ran the Lord of the Rings games for a long time. So the Two Towers, Return of the King, Battle for Middle-earth. I worked with Mike Verdu and his team on that. There we go. EA Los Angeles ran that. Ran Maxis, so Sims 2. At EA Los Angeles, we did Medal of Honor Airborne, which, by the way, I think was way underrated. Battle of Middle-earth was actually also done in EA Los Angeles. And then in 2008, I left and I founded a mobile game company called NG Moco, which was one of the very first mobile game companies. We did on iPhone, we did Rolando and Topple and Maze Finger and Dr. Awesome, and then we sold that and We Rule and Godfinger. We sold that to a company called DNA, Japanese company, and I worked with DNA for a few years. Then founded Network, built Legendary Game of Heroes, spent some time working with John, and now have my new company, Edenic.
So, quite a few games. So know what you're talking about.
A bunch of games.
Bunch of games.
Bunch of games.
So when did you start thinking seriously about AI?
So about 2 years ago. So I used to be a programmer, but literally I stopped programming on like 68,000, like Atari ST and Amiga. And before that, I spent a bunch of time doing 6502 stuff straight to the metal on 8-bit Ataris. And so I was so out of sorts coding. Just as a hobby project, I wanted to have sort of Python capability just for fun. And so I had ChatGPT 3.5 teach me how to code in Python. And it was just a super magical experience. I think about AI as like exoskeletons. Like, I know there's a lot of concern about AI and sort of its impact on the games industry, and it will have a significant impact for sure. But it's sort of like your feet being mad at a bicycle. It's like, it's an incredible tool. And it allowed me to do things that I just couldn't do. And, when you've been in the games industry for as long as, as we have, because you were in that UK industry, page 6.
Don't talk about hell.
You can't help but turn your attention to sort of like, what could this do? And what could we what could we do with it? And so it's really been the last couple of years that I've been thinking about it in a deep way.
And so can you just describe kind of what Edenic does?
So we invest, own, and operate companies that are either going to be sort of favored by this, AI future, or might be strategic to it. If you sort of thought of the industry as going through this kind of transformation, there's going to be positive things there, and there's going to be some challenging things. And so Edenic's role really is to try to help navigate us through that and sort of apply AI intelligently to the industry as it exists today, and then ultimately try to do net new things that just have not been able to be done before or haven't been done before.
You posted some things online where you talked about the need for disruptive innovation, I think is the term that you use. How would you define that?
So that term comes from a book by this guy, Clay Christensen, called Innovators Dilemma. And I didn't go to business school. In fact, I didn't really go to school. But if I had gone to business school, I probably would have read that book there instead of reading it myself. And it's good, it's interesting. The basic idea is that industries are introduced usually through some innovation. And then as that industry grows over time and matures, the companies that innovated originally find themselves in this dilemma where they are serving different sets of customers than actually they originally intended to serve. So they lose sight of people, that actually got them to the place that they were at. They're also protecting the revenue that they've built, right? And so it's very difficult to take the types of risks that you need to take in order to be and build a successful business. And that's why, startups come along and disrupt incumbent companies, and then maybe those incumbent companies try to buy those startups so that they can stay on the edge of innovation. So the concept in that book is the Innovators Dilemma, is that these disruptive innovators, right, come in and sort of introduce a new S-curve for the industry. So you have sort of like one S-curve that goes like that, and then the disruptive innovators come in, there's another S-curve that kind of gets introduced. And my basic thought is our industry, it's become stagnant. Like, we've painted ourselves into a very difficult corner. Not intentionally, but we're at a place now where games cost so much to make, and they take so much time to actually produce them, that companies that finance those things are afraid to take the risks, the commercial risk that it takes to actually go and build those things.
Just for the audience here, can you, how much is a AAA game to make these days?
Oh, AAA game, $300–400 million, and at the far end of the spectrum, you've got something like GTA 6 that's rumored to be $2 billion. It's very, very easy to imagine spending $50, $100 million, $150 million building a product and taking 2 or 3 years to actually make it, which actually is the other dimension of that. You're tying up incredibly creative people for such a long period of time. And then, by the way, this is sort of, that would be a AAA game that you ship. Across the industry, sort of writ large, about 70% of the revenue that the industry generates comes actually from catalog and live operated games. And so in mobile, for example, like 80% of the revenue any year is coming from live operated games. And so if the mobile games industry sort of revenue is 55 billion in the US, or 110 billion on a global basis, like 80 or 90 billion of that is coming from live operated games, and those live operated games are spending 25 or 30% of that money actually on continuing to develop those titles. So it's not just the cost to make the game, it's then the cost to continue to service that game. So the challenge for a publisher is they're often looking at a multi-$100-million commitment to go on a creative endeavor. And if you follow that to the end of the line, you end up in a place where you just don't take any chances. And you build things that only everybody wants to play instead of the thing that you want to play, or that you want to play, or that you want to play. And so we sort of have to break that if we want to actually fulfill the true potential of the audience, of the industry. We've got to get to a place where there's just a much better distribution of ideas to audience. And I think it starts, unfortunately, often, only one direction that it starts from is the sort of underlying economics of the industry.
So how do you make it cheaper? Is the answer AI?
Well, that's one of the answers, right? So I think we think about AI, and you can apply it in two dimensions, right? One is what is its impact to the professional creator class, right? So the 150, 180,000 people who are employed in the games industry. If the average team size is, let's call it 50 people, right? And in this sort of AI future, 5 or 10 people can do what 50 people were able to do before. That has a couple of really important sort of downstream implications. The first implication is that the economics of games changes, right? Now you only have to invest the 5 or 10 person expense to be able to build the product, and that just actually allows you to take more creative risk and develop more interesting things. The second question is what happens to the other 40 people, right? And so there's sort of like two pieces to that puzzle. The first is a lot of the very best people making games are tied up supporting the revenue from those games after they ship. And so they don't actually go to create anything else. And so this affords those people the ability to actually go and start making things on top of those tools. And then the question is, what happens to the other 30 people, right, of that 50-person average team? And I think they probably move out from those companies that start going through those types of changes. But the real important question is, do they leave the games industry? And I don't think that they do. Because the people who are in the games industry, the people who make the games industry and make the games, the vast majority of those people are making games because it's what they love. They're doing it not actually because it's a paycheck. They're doing it because it's the thing that they always dreamt to do. It's why we've been able to get the very best engineers and the very best artists and the very best, people to participate in the games industry, because some percentage of all great people in all careers grew up playing games, and they loved games, and they just wanted to make it and always dreamt of making it. And so I think these tools will afford those people the ability to be able to build games. And because those games require far smaller audiences of people to support them, I think we're going to see this sort of shift. And it's going to happen over time, and it's going to be challenging to be able to manage through. But I think we're going to see this shift where you could get to the place where 1 or 2 people could build a game that they love for the sets of people that actually want to play it. Like this kind of sub-stackification of the games industry, where you can get to that 1,000 true fans that could actually support a small team of people making something amazing. And I think that is a really promising future for the games industry. So I know this is a long answer. But the second question is, what happens when AI tooling allows people who didn't train to become game makers, but have incredible ideas, grew up playing games, affords them the ability to be able to make games, to be able to take their ideas and turn those ideas into applications, into games. I think that's going to explode the creator class.
So is it good enough to be able to do that? So we had Les Benzies on the main stage yesterday, and he's talking about this as well with the tool that's in Mind's Eye, and that's his vision for that as well. He's wanting you to be able, it's basically a toy set, and initially there's a few rules, but he will expand the rule set over time. Do you think that AI is good enough for you to be able to simply describe it, what you want to be able to play?
I think it will become that way. I mean,
ultimately, are we heading towards like the holodeck in Star Trek,
We are.
where you just describe the experience that you want.
Yeah, we are. We are. I mean, there's two ways to think about this. The first is we've built games exactly the same way for the last 50 years, right? Player character, non-player character, map with objects and code equals game, right? And so that's been the equation. And what's happened is the device complexity and capability and the team sizes have grown such that that equation now delivers incredibly complex games that are expensive to make and that take a long time to build. People armed with AI exoskeletons will be able to do that dramatically more effectively. And it's going to have this huge impact on the games industry for all the reasons we've talked about. I think that degree of disruption sort of pales into insignificance relative to what happens next, when games are the product of weights and models and biases, and we move away from applying AI to that equation, and we start thinking about these sort of AI native experiences where inference is like the renderer. Instead of a stream of text tokens that you see when an LLM generates, what will the future be like when it's a stream of frames of video? And each one of those frames of video is another frame of what a game could be. How we express our creativity as game makers in that world and the tools that we use to do that, I think are going to change, right? We're going to focus differently and build things differently. There will always be the sort of a place for the human in that equation, I think, I hope. But that future is what you're talking about. Because when things are changing geometrically, right, the difference between a 20 frame per second, doesn't hold coherence for a long time Quake demo, and real world fidelity is actually not that far away. You know? So I think that's not a this 5 years, but the next 5 years, and definitely the 5 years after that. It's going to be amazing.
Do you see there are tools that are already heading this way that you think are close?
I don't think that they are close yet.
No?
I think that there's work that's going on in research labs right now which shows you that future. You know, you might have seen the demo that Microsoft put out for Quake. You know, that followed on a demo that Google put out on Doom. There's a team of researchers in Edinburgh and Switzerland that have been working on CSGO. It's very early stuff, but directionally, it's really interesting. And in the meantime, we have the opportunity to step into these exoskeletons. Like the image I have in my head is like Ripley in the dock loader and in Aliens, like able to just doing, to not just lift things but fight. And what AI can be for game makers is an exoskeleton that allows them to do things that they just could not have done before, at a scale, at a speed. And what that means is the round trip time between their idea and an expression of that idea shortens dramatically. Like when I'm building games, or have been building games, the round trip time between my idea and seeing it on the screen and having the software talk back to me sometimes was weeks or months. You know, when it's seconds and minutes, like I'm able to get to the better idea much faster. And I think that's the actual opportunity. The opportunity is like, get in the fucking dock loader.
All right, so we could talk about this for a long time. I've got time for one more question.
Yeah.
So the timeline in front of us to get to kind of where you're talking about, what do you think it is?
So I think the industry. I think we're going to go through these phases.
Yeah.
Right. So I think you could think of the first phase as like the practical application of AI to the industry as it exists today, and that's all the things that we talked about against that equation of player character and non-player character and map and objects and code, where AI exoskeletons really allow teams to do more with less, essentially. And so that means more creative things get built. That's phase one. I think the downstream implications of that actually move us into phase two. And that's where you start seeing like the substackification of games. You know, when it becomes a lot easier to build a game, do you get new types of games being built? Could they ever become ephemeral? If they do become ephemeral, does your relationship shift from with the game to with the person who made the game? And so, yeah, that first phase is kind of like the next 5 years. That second phase, I think, would roughly be the following 5 years.
Right.
And then the 5 years after that, I think, is when we get to this place where you can have these incredible individual experiences, or experiences that lots of people share that are amazing. But I'm certain that in the window of a decade to 20 years from now, it's just going to be amazing. It is going to be like the holodeck. It is going to be incredible.
Well, that's a fantastic place to finish on. Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen, and Neil Young.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.